Late one night, new information changed everything. The tip led investigators to a second location, where a search uncovered human remains. By the evening of March 3rd, 2015, officers following a confession arrived at a shed in Barton Court, Barton Hill, Bristol. Inside the outbuilding were sealed bags and stacked boxes, carefully arranged with no signs of panic or struggle. Detectives would later say the scene appeared organized with deliberate care. Hidden inside were the dismembered remains of a 16-year-old girl named Rebecca Marie Watts. To everyone who loved her, she was simply Becky. She had been missing for 12 days. Becky Watts was born on June 3, 1998, in Bristol, England. She was the youngest child of Darren Galsworthy and Tanya Watts. Quiet, small, and naturally shy, Becky was someone who only fully opened up to people she trusted. Her family described her as a mix of chaos and warmth, like a tornado and a sunbeam at the same time. But her kindness wasn't something she gave away easily. The people close to her knew how special that trust really was. When Becky was only 3 years old, she entered foster care. The circumstances were painful and complicated, but her father Darren fought to bring her home and eventually won custody. Becky moved in with him in St. George, Bristol, a working-class area lined with red brick terrace houses and quiet streets. That neighborhood became the place she grew up. Darren later described losing Becky as having his heart ripped out and crushed beneath someone's feet. Years later, Darren married a woman named Angie, who already had a son named Nathan Matthews. Nathan was 12 years older than Becky. The families blended together, and according to Darren, they spent weekends together constantly. He said he loved Nathan like his own son, but what that blended family would eventually become was something no one could have imagined. Becky attended Summerhill Junior School, where teachers remembered her as incredibly shy and gentle. But by the end of primary school, she slowly began coming out of her shell. Her teenage years, however, brought serious struggles. After starting secondary school, Becky became the target of relentless bullying over her weight. The abuse was severe enough that by 2011, she was referred to Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services and diagnosed with anorexia nervosa. At her worst point, Becky weighed only 6 stone. Anxiety became so overwhelming, she couldn't attend school normally and was eventually taught in a hospital setting. Even then, she fought quietly and persistently. By March 2013, she had regained a healthy weight, and doctors described her as joyful and happy again. While receiving treatment, Becky formed close friendships, including one with Courtney Bicker, who later became her best friend. Together, they were nicknamed the Three Amigos. By late 2014, Becky's life finally seemed to be improving. She enrolled at KTS training in Bristol to complete her GCSEs. According to Angie, she had become increasingly fashion-conscious, developing her own style and always looking immaculate. Around this time, she also began dating Luke Oberhansley, a relationship that started in November 2014. Luke later said he never knew Becky had struggled with anxiety because she always appeared cheerful around him. Angie described Becky as two completely different people, quiet and reserved on the outside, but loud, funny, and full of life with the people she loved. "We were inseparable," she later said. On the evening of February 18, 2015, Becky attended a Skittles night at Barton Hill Rugby Club before staying overnight with a friend. Everyone who saw her later described her as relaxed and happy. Her friend Adam Dancy remembered them spending the night laughing and joking around together. The next morning, February 19th, Becky returned home to Crown Hill around 8 a.m. planning to catch up on sleep. She had no idea what was waiting for her. Around 11 that morning, Angie Galsworthy left the house for a hospital appointment. Because she suffered from multiple sclerosis, arrangements had been made for a key to be left outside for someone visiting the home. That visitor was Nathan Matthews. Just minutes after Angie left, Becky sent a routine text message to a friend. It was the last confirmed contact anyone would ever receive from her. Nathan Matthews and his girlfriend Shauna, who arrived at the house shortly afterward. What happened next inside Crown Hill was later pieced together through forensic evidence, CCTV footage, phone records, and Matthews' own admissions. Becky was attacked in her bedroom. Prosecutors said she fought desperately for her life before being suffocated and stabbed 15 times. Matthews later admitted bringing a bag containing handcuffs, tape, a stun gun, and a mask. He claimed his intention had only been to scare Becky because he was angry over what he described as her treatment of Angie. But prosecutors argued from the beginning that the crime was sexually motivated. Evidence recovered from phones and computers belonging to Matthews and Hoare revealed what the prosecution described as a shared obsession with petite teenage girls. Angie returned home around 12:45 p.m., unaware of what had happened upstairs. Matthews and Hoare remained in the house throughout the day, even as other family members arrived home. That evening, Becky's boyfriend Luke came looking for her and was told no one thought she was there. Shortly after 8 p.m., Matthews and Hoare left Crown Hill and drove back to their home on Cotton Mill Lane. Becky's body was hidden in the boot of the car. That night, they ordered takeaway food, watched television, and made phone calls as though nothing had happened. Over the following days, their actions became horrifyingly methodical. On February 20th, Matthews was captured on CCTV entering a B&Q store in Horefield, where he purchased a circular saw, gloves, goggles, and a face mask. Earlier that same day, he had bought drain cleaner from a supermarket. Between February 20th and 22nd, CCTV repeatedly captured Matthews and Hoare shopping for cleaning supplies. The dismemberment took place inside the bathroom of the Cotton Mill Lane property. Becky's remains were then placed into bags and boxes before being transported to a shed at 9 Barton Court, the home of a neighbor. The homeowners later admitted allowing the packages to be stored there, but insisted they had no idea what was inside. Meanwhile, Becky's disappearance was becoming impossible to ignore.
When Darren returned home from work on February 19 and realized Becky was gone, the family initially assumed she had simply gone out. But her phone, laptop, tablet, money, and clothes were all still inside the house. Becky had told no one she planned to leave. On February 20, she was officially reported missing. Avon and Somerset police launched a public appeal 2 days later. Soon after, Darren and Becky's grandmother Pat Watts appeared before cameras in Anonymous Channel press conference begging for Becky to come home. Darren struggled to speak through tears as he pleaded directly to his daughter, telling her that no matter what had happened, they could work through it together. Pat took over when Rebecca met Anonymous Channel to continue, asking Becky to contact anyone at all used so they knew she was safe. The hashtag Find Becky quickly spread across social media and reached millions of people worldwide. Volunteers searched parks, riverbanks, woods, and open spaces throughout Bristol while police deployed specialist search teams daily. National agencies and missing persons experts joined the investigation as concern intensified. Detective Inspector Richard O'Connor even recorded a direct message aimed at Becky herself, assuring her she was not in trouble and begging her to contact someone. But by the time those appeals were broadcast, Becky had already been dead for days. Throughout the investigation, Nathan Matthews and Shauna O'Hare inserted themselves into the search. They comforted the family, appeared concerned, and gave police statements claiming they had visited Crown Hill on February 19 but never actually saw Becky. They insisted they only heard the front door slam and assumed she had gone out. At first, investigators accepted the explanation. Police later appealed publicly for information regarding the movements of a black Vauxhall Zafira between February 19 and 23. The vehicle belonged to Nathan Matthews. 9 days after Becky vanished, Matthews and O'Hare were arrested in connection with her disappearance. On March 2, both were arrested on suspicion of murder. The following day, March 3, police searched the shed at Barton Court after Matthews finally confessed. Inside they found Becky Watts. One of the most disturbing aspects of the case was the period before the arrests. For over a week Nathan Matthews remained close to the investigation, pretending to grieve alongside the very family he had destroyed. He sat beside Becky's father during media appeals and continued repeating the same false story to detectives. What ultimately exposed him was the CCTV footage. Cameras captured Matthews purchasing a saw and cleaning products immediately after Becky's death. Footage also showed Matthews and O'Hare buying batteries for the stun before arriving at Crown Hill on the day of the murder. The performance collapsed because the evidence was too precise. The murder trial began at Bristol Crown Court on October 6, 2015. Nathan Matthews admitted killing Becky and hiding her remains but denied murder, claiming the death had been accidental. Sauna Oare denied all charges. Prosecutor William Mousley QC told the jury Becky had been suffocated while fighting for her life before an organized and grotesque cover-up began. The prosecution relied heavily on CCTV footage, forensic evidence, DNA findings, and digital evidence recovered from phones and computers. Experts testified that the level of dismemberment suggested more than one person had been involved. Matthews attempted to argue manslaughter, claiming he only intended to kidnap and frighten Becky. The jury rejected the explanation quickly. On November 11, 2015, Nathan Matthews was convicted of murder. Sauna Oare was convicted of manslaughter along with multiple additional charges including conspiracy to kidnap, perverting the course of justice, preventing a lawful burial, and possession of illegal guns. 2 days later the sentences were delivered. The judge described the planned kidnapping as sexually motivated and called Matthews fixated on petite teenage girls. Matthews received life imprisonment with a minimum term of 33 years before parole eligibility. Oare was sentenced to 17 years. Both later appealed their convictions, but the Court of Appeal rejected the challenges entirely. Other individuals connected to the story of Becky's remains also faced charges. Carl Demetrius received a 2-year sentence, while his girlfriend Jane Parsons received 16 months. One detail from sentencing stood out sharply. Matthews technically benefited from being described as a man of previous good character, meaning he had no criminal convictions before the murder. Yet investigators had uncovered disturbing material on electronic devices showing long-standing obsessions and disturbing interests that suggested the danger had existed long before Becky was killed. The lab treated his clean record as mitigation. But for many, it simply meant he had never been caught before. Before the trial even began, Becky's family gathered to say goodbye. Her funeral took place on April 17, 2015, at St. Ambrose Church in Bristol, the same church where Darren and Angie had married years earlier. Darren described the service as a celebration of Becky's life rather than only mourning her death. Friends and family later attended a private burial at Avonview Cemetery. During his tribute, Darren remembered Becky becoming more confident, stylish, and independent in the years before she died. He said she had left an enormous emptiness behind in both their family and the nation itself. A year later, a memorial bench was installed near Crown Hill in Becky's memory. In 2016, Darren also released a memoir about his daughter, explaining he wanted people to remember Becky for her life rather than only the brutality of her death. After the verdict, Becky's mother Tanya, her grandmother Pat, and her brother Danny stood outside the Bristol Crown Court with a final message. They wanted the world to remember Becky as she truly was, beautiful, funny, loyal, caring, fierce, and full of life. And they urged parents everywhere to listen carefully when their children are trying to tell them something, because sometimes the warning signs people dismiss are the ones that matter most.